Good morning, everybody. David McLeod here, coming to you from Belmont, California. Welcome to episode number 71 of Life Matters TV. Hard to believe, 71 episodes, man. That's like almost 72. Wow. Anyway, I'm here with my good buddy Tommy Stoffel. We're going to be talking today about a real interesting topic, this concept of what we're calling spontaneous wisdom. And we'll get into what that means and what we mean by it. But I hope that that you'll get something valuable from it, and I trust you will. But anyway, good morning, Tommy. How are you doing, brother?
Hey, David. Doing great. Thanks for the intro, and welcome, everybody. I'll just put out the invitation here that if anybody has any thoughts that pop up, as we're talking, go ahead and chat them to us, and hopefully we'll see them and be able to comment or answer any questions you might have. And while I'm promoting things, remember, you can always go to Life-Matters-TV, see past episodes. You got something going on in life, you're not sure how to deal with it. There's lots of stuff out there that we're sure can help you. So today, we're not talking about going out for information, we're talking about going in for information, and that's this whole concept of spontaneous wisdom. So what the heck does that mean? Well, I don't know.
I'm spontaneously having a brain fart too. So
no, it just came to me. I paused and there it is. There it is again. And that's kind of the concept. I'm making light of it a little bit, but what we're talking about today is the power within you to, when we can quiet down and get a little still in our minds, and if we have something we're looking for, some information about our life or information that will help us make a decision, it's in us. We can tap into it. That wisdom comes from wherever it comes from. It can funnel through us. And again, only when we kind of get still and quiet. So that's what we're talking about today with this idea of spontaneous, like it just happens. And it's this wisdom that comes from the heavens, let's say. But that's what we're talking about, and how to tap into that on a regular basis, right?
Yeah. There was recently I was having a conversation with somebody who talked to me about seeing all of the universe or higher power or God or whatever you want to talk about as a giant jellyfish. It was a really cool image as I thought about it, because you've got this big blob at the top that has all these tendrils that extend down. And if we imagine ourselves, each of us, as being one of those tendrils, we can see that in one way we look like we're separate from one another, but in another way we're actually connected up to this massive blob of information. And so what Tommy is talking about is trusting that we here at the end of this tendril have access to that knowledge that is being fed up through the other tendrils and is being fed back down again to everybody else. So we all have access to it, and we have access to it 100% of the time. It's just that while we're busy navigating our way through the world and doing these worldly physical things that we think we have to do, we're spending a lot of time up here in our minds, in our egos, and so it's easy to forget about that connection that seems to happen through our hearts, through that beautiful open space that's in our chest. So that's really what we're talking about here. And so, we've talked about this in many, many different ways in past episodes. And so it's really just a reframe of a different way of looking at things. So that's kind of what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I love that concept of tendrils, of connection. And you're right, when we're caught up in our daily stuff and our daily mind games, we forget we're plugged in to the ultimate outlet, that we're connected all the time. If you're not connected, the moment you become disconnected, literally disconnect, you're dead. That means that your tentacle's been retracted, and your connection is moving out of the physical realm back into the spiritual realm. So as long as you're walking and breathing in a physical body, you are connected. There's just no doubt about it. Now it's a matter of how to use that connection or how to tap into that connection, right? You can have a phone line in your house back in the day when maybe phones weren't accessible, or you have an internet connection back in the early days of internet connection. You have the connection, but you just don't know how to use it. The freaking computer sits there and it's a brick because you're afraid to use it. You don't know how. Nobody's taught you. So today we're just explaining a little bit about how to connect to the internet, how to connect to the ultimate internet,
right?
And how to get that information when you need it. So
yeah, and mentioning the internet's a good thing too, because I mean, where's the first place we go nowadays for information? You know, I mean, how many people? Well, I guess in the U.S. it's probably a universal thing, but maybe outside in the rest of the world they don't know so much. But how many people don't know about Google? You know, how many people don't use Google to find information? And as I said in my write-up, I think, you know, Google is a great source for certain kinds of information. But the problem with that information is that source, that particular source, doesn't know anything about me personally. Whereas my source through this tendril knows everything about me. And so it can feed me information that's relevant to who I am. And I have to listen very carefully. I can't connect in the typical way. I can't use just my brain. I have to use my feelings and my senses and my breathing and every aspect of my being in order to be able to connect to that.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a matter of, you know, go to whatever search engine you want for information out there, information about humans, about the planet, about things, how to deal with situations out there. But then when it starts to become interpersonal, and when it starts to become things really deeply personal and private, right there, I just read a quote the other day from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that you know, connecting with your inner self is a core thing that you must do in life, and that everyone does it differently. And that's just it, right? If I have something going on inside myself of a really deep inner spiritual nature, I can maybe talk to David about it, but David's probably going to deal with those things differently. And you know, there's 7+ billion people on the planet. There's 7+ billion different ways of dealing with our inner self. And so that's where, you know, search engines out there aren't as much help. Maybe able to find some guidance or a coach or a training or a course that kind of fits what you're looking for. But if you want the custom solution that's designed for you, you got to go inside for it. That's and inside to get, you know, into that connection, into that place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, ultimately, the best coach for you is the coach inside. Is that coach that knows everything about you. And there is only one such being on this planet who knows you as well as, I mean, you know yourself better than anybody else does. That's all there is to it. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use feedback from other people. In fact, it's pretty necessary, because I'm looking at my life through my set of lenses and my filters and all the rest of it. And so I may see things that are blindered. I may have a limited perspective. In fact, I know I do have a limited perspective. So when I can hear someone else's perspective, especially when it's exactly opposite my own, that's when it really opens me up to the possibilities. Oh, okay, so maybe there's a different way of looking at that. And remember last week we talked about believing 6 impossible things. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Open yourself up. Open yourself up to a different perspective, and take that information in, and then feel it. Feel it inside and say, is this true for me? Is this resonating for me? Is this my truth? And you'll know the answer to that. You'll have a physical response of some kind that says, oh yeah, absolutely. This has got the ring of truth for me.
I did an exercise. I did actually a past life regression hypnotherapy session some months ago. And actually what I was looking for was a kind of a view as to what goes on in between lives. So I wanted to see for myself, like, so when I'm not in a physical body or, you know, living a life, what's going on?
Oh,
and it
cool.
was a very interesting thing that happened, because at first it was this darkness, and I was thinking, oh, this isn't working. I'm not getting hypnotized. This isn't working. This isn't working. And then there was this orangey kind of glowy thing, and I went and I kind of okay, I'll follow that little bit of light. And when I immersed myself in that light, I felt this intense love that people talk about, that, you know, that we sit in, that we reside in, that we are part of. And I had the emotions of that deep love, and this kind of orangey light is what it was to me. And then I sat in that for a little bit, and then I saw from the distance this silver shimmering cloud. It was almost like Northern Lights, but silver and just shimmery and like kind of dancing in space, almost Star Trek-y thing. And I said, okay, well, let's go explore that. And when I got there, I realized that that was like this library. It was this wisdom library. It was intelligence. It was brilliance. It was all that knowledge of everything. And then when I kind of came back, I was realizing what a gift we have as human beings, because without a body, we can kind of experience those things, but we can't use it. Mm-hmm. And we don't actually physically, love another being. We don't physically without body. So this is part of our birthright as a human being, to be able to tap into that space of wisdom. And I know I kind of veered off a little bit from where you were going, David, but perfect. But the whole thing of it is get out of our heads, because our heads are human structures that start collecting data when we're 1 year old, 1 day old, and build up. And we talked about beliefs last week, and what to believe and how not to believe everything, all that stuff. But in tapping into this wisdom, it's yours. It's your birthright. It's your way into knowing yourself better. And there's answers in there to just about any situation you're going to face in life.
Yeah, that's really a beautiful story, Tommy. And I was feeling myself getting kind of all warm and fuzzy as I was listening to you, thinking, man, I want that kind of connection. I want that kind of love in my life. That's beautiful. And I think it's something that maybe a lot of people are looking for, that sort of thing. Now, as far as this spontaneous wisdom is concerned, I just want to kind of come back to that. It seems to me that one thing that we can do, anybody can do this, is just simply ask a question. For example, here's a question that you might ask yourself. What is my best choice for my life right now? Now, and then just let it go. Let it go. You don't necessarily have to wait right then and there for an answer. Just let it go. But what's interesting about this is that as you go about your day, if you forget about the question and just let the question be out there in the universe resonating, little pieces of information will show up for you everywhere. You might see a flower just, or a butterfly landing on a flower or something like that. You might hear a song on the radio. You might see a bus driving by with a message on the side. I mean, something that you may never have noticed before suddenly takes on a new meaning because of the question you asked. And I mean, that's what I think of as spontaneous wisdom. The answers can come from anywhere. Yes, they can come from within too, but when you see it on the outside, you're going to have that knowing internally, oh God, I got to pay attention to that. This is what's beautiful about spontaneous wisdom, and it can happen to everybody anytime.
Totally spot on, David. Yeah, this starts to, when you say this out loud, it kind of starts to sound a little weird, a little woo-woo, but this is, I had the same experiences, right? You ask a question inside about something that you want to know or something you want to learn about yourself. And you're right, you'll be watching a movie, and or you're watching maybe a movie you've seen a couple times, and all of a sudden somebody's saying something, you're like, that's part of the answer to the freaking question I asked yesterday. And you start picking it up. You're right, a bus going by, or a lyric to a song. All of a sudden you're singing a song you've sung all your life, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I never heard that lyric before. And it's part of the answer, or an answer, or the answer to this ask you put out there into the universe.
Yep.
So as far as the process goes, yeah, that's it. It's asking something that, has to do with your betterment, your self improvement, your spiritual awareness, your awakening, your consciousness, your presence. Something, it's not about a car or a house or money, nothing material. That usually doesn't work too well. But a career, a purpose. And then you have to really pay attention, right, David, to the answers as they, and don't expect it's going to come in the next half hour. It'll probably come over the course of a couple days, or, you know, depending on when you're ripe to hear the information or see it or get it.
And I think that there's an important way of asking the question too. You know, if I believe asking the question with beginning with a how statement or a how word, how can I, or something along that line, you're basically putting out the intention to solve a problem, to create an impact, to do something. And all you're asking is the universe, help me out here. How can I transform this situation so that such and such can come about? And then just let it go.
Yeah.
You know, just let it go. Because if you try to overanalyze it, you are then getting your ego mind in the way. And that is going to cloud any answers that might come to you. It might be harder to see them then. So it's really important to just ask a really clear question. How can I, blah, finish the question?
So this is weird. One of these, a question came to me several times as an answer to what question to ask, and I'll explain what that means. I'm like, okay, you know, what next in life? What direction should I go in? Kind of a vague question, but those still, then you got to, you know, really pay attention. Well, I heard a friend tell me last Friday, she goes, you know what I've been doing lately? She's been saying, I've been asking what life wants from me. What does life want from me?
Oh, that's a good one.
And that's what she's been putting out, the energy she's putting out. That's a pretty amazing question, right? Not what can I get from life? What am I supposed to do? But what does life want from me? And 3 days later, I was watching actually an Eckhart Tolle recording, and he said the same exact words. Sometimes you just need to ask what life wants from you. I'm like, go twice, the same words, in a couple days. That's the clue. That's the clue that you're onto an answer. Mm-hmm. You know, especially when you get confirmation or you hear the same thing twice. Sometimes I need it a third time because I'm a little thick in the head. I need to be whacked, 3 times before I get it. But you're right, Dave. That's the way it comes, and it comes from, friends that you trust, or sources that you believe in, or lyrics of a song that have meaning to you. I don't even want to try to list where it comes from. It could be something in nature happens that kind of confirms what you're seeking.
Yeah, and another form of the question might be, what can I do to shift my energy so that such and such happens? It's kind of a variation of the same question, really. But I think that you can ask for things if you want them. For example, maybe you need more money in your life. Maybe that's one issue that's up for you. Well, how can I take what I love and bring this into the world in such a way that I am rewarded with all the money that I need to take care of my needs? How can I do that? And put it out there. One way or another, the universe will provide an answer. And it will provide lots of different answers. With a big question like that, it's going to have lots of answers. Something that's more focused and more narrow will give you a narrower range of answers. That's just the way life works. So don't be afraid to ask the question. And more importantly, don't be afraid when the answer comes. That's when you got to be brave.
Yeah. You've asked, and now you've got an answer, and now you probably need to do something about it. You don't want to be crying wolf or just asking a bunch of questions and then, oh yeah, that's cool, and then not taking any action or not taking it to heart and not doing something about it. So there's a sense of responsibility there too, right?
Absolutely.
Kind of in communication with the universe, and if the universe is giving you information, there's something that you probably need to do inside, either to change something or to shift something or to behave a certain way or to take some action. So and not to be afraid of it when it comes. So you said, when we talked about this title, Spontaneous Wisdom, you said it sounds like spontaneous combustion. Well, Sometimes, yeah, sometimes people, and this is not a, don't be afraid and don't not do this, but, they say be careful what you ask for. You do need to be a little conscious and aware of what it is you're asking for. If you're asking 18 different questions a day, then what's going to happen? All these answers are going to come in. You're not going to know which one is answering which question.
Yeah.
So there is some degree of focus in here, like maybe pull up one really thing that's churning in you that you want to figure out, and maybe come up with a couple different ways of asking it, so you get different angles of answers, but hopefully as you're paying attention, and again, like David said, you're hearing it through your mind, but you're not like, oh, that's not the answer. Oh, that sucks. Oh, that's stupid. Or, don't let your mind start chewing away at it. Getting back to feeling it. Does that feel true? You hear the lyric in a song, and all of a sudden it tingles up the back of your neck. You're like, oh, okay. That's one to pay attention to. So maybe David, how do we, how do we confirm that the information we're getting is part of an answer?
Well, I think you already answered the question, Tommy. I mean, feelings, sensations.
Yeah.
If we stop thinking about it and analyzing what we're seeing, which is what our typical left brain likes to do, analyze it, find the logic in it, find the rationality in it, find all the sequential stuff and the linear thinking in it, we're going to analyze it to death, and we're going to come to a conclusion somewhere along that way that says, oh, that probably isn't the right thing to do because it just doesn't make sense, But if we feel it and we just allow ourselves to have that experience of enjoying the sensations in the moment, that, as Tommy was talking about, going into that orange light and feeling that sense of love, there aren't words for that. There is no logic to that. It is just a feeling. And it's when you get that feeling and maybe have the tingle up your spine and into your neck, as Tommy suggested, any kind of a physical sensation in your body is going to tell you. And you know the difference between a loving feeling and maybe a fearful feeling, a feeling that says stay away from that and feeling that says go towards that. You know that. So follow those feelings and trust them. That's what your guidance is there for.
And separating the feelings, the true feelings. This is always a game too of trusting your sensation, your feeling, your intuition, versus when the brain starts coming in, the brain starts doing that thinking that can kind of lead to feelings of fear, but it's thought-based feelings. There's a fun fuzzy line there too that not always is clear. And one way I help distinguish is the timing. And this is a little tricky too, but ask a question, and when the first response that your body has is the truth. Within a split second or 2 seconds or so after that, your brain starts chugging the data, and because it can only work at the speed of light, and then these thought-based fears, or I call it the avalanche or the cave-in. All the ideas, all the doubts, all the worries, all the oh, that won't work. Oh, this guy, and it's like this cave-in that happens.
That's the internal combustion.
That's the internal combustion, and you need to sometimes, and you can go back in your, you ask a question, you feel like you might have gotten an answer, and then the cave-in happens, and then 2 days later, you can still go back and revisit that situation and say, okay, I asked, what was the first thing I felt? What was the first thing I felt before the cave-in happened, before the avalanche, before all the doubts, before all the no's? Oh, you know what? That still feels right. You can go back and re-feel what you felt at that instant. And so that's part of this game too. It's not a science. It's not a yes or no answer all the time. You have to feel it. You have to feel the truths.
Yeah, nicely done. I like that. I never thought about the concept of re-feeling. That's a great idea. Yeah, you felt it once. Now go back and feel it again. I mean, it's kind of like having a teddy bear when you're a kid. You know what it felt like the first time. And then you reach out a second time and you still liked it. And then maybe a third time you still liked it. You know what I mean? So you can feel things over and over and over again. And the same thing is true on those internal feelings that come up into the heart and into the body. You can revisit those feelings at any time. And I just want to remind you that, remember last week we talked about the 6 impossible things. So just keep reminding yourself that maybe what you believe isn't so. And maybe what you feel is so. You might want to try that, because I think your body never lies, but your mind might lie once in a while in order to do what it thinks it's doing to keep you safe.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw it yesterday or heard it this morning. Somewhere in the last 24 hours, somebody said, your heart never lies. Your heart speaks the truth. That's what we're talking about, that feeling, feeling, the sensation. This is something to also practice, is to understand how your body reacts, or what that response mechanism is. Some people talk about butterflies in the stomach. Some people talk about tingles up the spine. Some people talk about the hair standing up, you know, not out of fear, but out of like, oh, that gave me a chill. I actually, when I get a real big truth, my eyes tear up. I get like misty-eyed. It's just what happens to me. It's like, so that's part of the feeling and the sensation that I use to judge, and to, you know, to then at that point think about what has just happened, and to start then taking action on it.
Yeah. And I think this is another place where a little bit of meditation can really help. When I'm doing something like this, okay, now I've had some kind of a physical reaction. Now I may not be able to stop and meditate right in the moment. Maybe this is happening when I'm driving my car, or maybe it's happening when I'm talking to a colleague, or whatever it is. But I can say, that happened. Now I want to just take that. I'm going to go and sit down quietly by myself, no matter where it is. Just give myself 5 minutes and just close my eyes, take a few deep breaths, and kind of just get quiet as I can, and just go back to that. So what happened? What happened? What was that I felt? And just allow myself to just kind of go there and be present to it. That is a great way of reconnecting to the feeling and maybe bypassing all the thinking that goes with it. It's worked for me. I'm sure it's worked for you too, Tommy.
Yeah, it's not only worked for me, but that's a requirement, and that's where I get the best success out of the, you know, the wisdom is that you have to get still, and there's almost an opening and a closing stillness. There's a before you even ask sometimes, or if you know what you want to ask, you ask and then you get still, or you get still and then you ask. You know, you gotta bring down the noise level, you gotta bring down the chatter level, because this connection doesn't work over chatter. This isn't a chatter connection. This isn't a mental connection. It's a connection that requires intense spiritual listening, and that can happen only when your mind is chilled down a bit and toned down a bit. So you're exactly right, David. Some degree of meditation to quiet the mind in any path it is. I had a teacher once, and she said, if you have a real problem in life, like something that you need to solve, she goes, you go to bed at night, you think about the question, the problem, what's going on. You have a glass of water next to your nightstand. You drink half the glass of, you ask the question, you drink half a glass of water, put it down, go to sleep. Wake up in the morning, drink the second half of the glass of water, and just be in a little bit of stillness and listen to see if you got an answer to your question. So it's the same concept. At that point in your sleep, right, your mind is really out of the way.
I love it. That's a beautiful exercise. I never would have thought of that. Just the physical tactile sensation of grabbing a glass of water and putting the intention into that water, drinking half of it and then putting it down, knowing that when you wake up in the morning, you're going to see that and say, oh yeah, I wonder what the answer is. That's awesome. I love it. That is just such a beautiful process. So I guess to summarize what we've been talking about here, if you want to connect and get some access to some spontaneous wisdom, the first thing you got to do is know what you want. Know what the question is that you want an answer to. That's the first thing. Second, you want to frame the question in a way that the universe feels absolutely compelled to give you an answer. And I like that question that Tommy suggested. What does life have in store for me? What is life directing me to do next? But an alternative variation, you can always ask, what can I do in order to blah? Whatever that fill in the blank piece is. And then maybe try the glass of water thing at night and just go to bed with it and wake up in the morning, drink it again, and just see what happens and sit quietly. But whatever you do, pay attention. Pay attention to the feelings in your body, to the things that show up in your life around you. Just pay attention. All of a sudden, things are going to have a different meaning than they may have had before. So allow that to happen. Give yourself permission to be present when the wisdom comes.
Beautiful way to end that, David. Paying attention, which actually kind of leads into next week's discussion, where we're going to talk about a human being. So we'll let that float out there for now, but it's about paying attention and sometimes being more than doing. And we'll talk about that next week. Until
awesome.
then, David, farewell. Great time, great talk.
See you later.
Everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. Love you. Thanks for joining us.